For much of the Harry Potter series, Draco Malfoy is the main antagonist, as he has the most hands-on opportunity to mess with and ruin Harry's life. For example, in the first book, Draco attempts to get Harry expelled not once, but twice within the first few weeks of them being at Hogwarts. The movies change these events drastically, and take a lot of credit away from Draco for these events. In the process of downplaying Draco's involvement, the movie also manages to ruin Harry's sweet revenge on Draco for these attacks. Now, Harry and Ron aren't like Draco or the other Slytherins, so they don't seek revenge in a brutal sort of way, but rather they try to find the best opportunity to thwart their nemesis mentally. And when Harry becomes the youngest person to get onto the Gryffindor Quidditch team in a century, it presents the perfect opportunity for the payoff of a lifetime to get back at Draco. However, this payoff is completely removed from the movie. My name is Gibby, and welcome back to episode 9 of Movies vs. Manuscripts Harry Potter Edition. This is the show where I analyze the Wizarding world, movie by movie, scene by scene, and compare it to J.K. Rowling's original writings. So far, we have made it past the Golden Trio's encounter with Fluffy, the three-headed dog, which included Neville if you didn't know, and today we come to Ron, Harry, and Hermione's next life-threatening experience with a troll on Halloween. We'll be covering this near-death experience and everything the movie changed about it. However, this isn't the only focus of this particular chapter in the book, as J.K. Rowling makes a point to continue the feud between Draco and Harry. But this time, it's Harry who comes out on top. Today, we're going to uncover how this troll attack solidified the bond of our Golden Trio, who so far have not gone along with each other, plus I'll reveal how the movie kind of ruined Harry's secret revenge on Draco. Real quick, I wanted to shout out this commenter from a couple episodes ago who really is bringing attention to the important issues with the series. Each week, I'll be highlighting one of my favorite comments from a past episode, so make sure to comment your thoughts at the end of this video to potentially get featured. As always, I'll point out all the changes between this chapter in the book and its corresponding scenes in the movie throughout 4 categories: characters, timeline, location, and plot. But first, we need to refresh our memory on what happens during these scenes in the movie. Picking up from where we left off last week, we see Harry and Oliver Wood walking out onto the Hogwarts lawn one morning carrying a large box. After opening up the crate, we see an assortment of balls that are used in the game of Quidditch, and the following scene shows Wood explaining the basics of the game to Harry. After this brief Quidditch lesson, we cut to Harry's next class, which is Charms, taught by Professor Flitwick. He is teaching the first years how to do one of the most rudimentary charms there is, which is levitation. After giving them the wrist movement and the incantation, the first years begin their practice on making their feathers fly. We see Ron struggling to accomplish the task, and after telling him that he's doing it wrong, Hermione shows him how it's done by casting a perfect Leviosa spell. The scene ends with a quick explosion from Seamus as he once again manages to blow something up. The movie then cuts to Harry, Ron, and some of the other Gryffindor boys walking out of the classroom, with Ron complaining about Hermione, who passes by him crying as she overheard his rude remarks. Next, the movie cuts to that night at the Halloween feast. We see everyone is in the Great Hall celebrating a Halloween-themed dinner, and Harry asks where Hermione is. Neville replies and says that he heard she was crying in the girls' bathroom all day and wouldn't come out. Suddenly, Professor Quirrell bursts into the room and starts screaming that there's a troll in the dungeon, and then passes out. This causes quite the commotion as all the students start screaming and running, but Dumbledore quickly puts an end to this as he gives instruction for the prefects to take their houses back to the dormitories, and the teachers to go to the dungeon. As Harry and Ron head back to the Gryffindor Tower with the rest of the class, they realize that Hermione will get left behind, and they rush off to go find her. Eventually, their plan backfires as they see the troll walking through a hallway and into the girls' bathroom where Hermione is. They run in and try to save her and have a massive fight with the troll that ends in them knocking it out and Harry getting a troll bogey on his wand. The professors rush in to see what all the commotion was, and Hermione sticks up for the boys, claiming that it's her fault that they all were in there. After Hermione gets some points taken away for her ignorance, McGonagall awards points to the boys for their bravery and sheer dumb luck. Finally, because some of the chapter overlaps with this next scene, I need to mention it, even though the movie kind of shows things out of order, which I'll explain in the plot changes. The next scene shows the trio at breakfast the next morning, as Harry is nervous for his upcoming Quidditch game that day. Snape comes up to wish him luck, and as he walks away, Harry notices that Snape is limping. Harry had also seen Snape's leg bleeding the previous night after the troll attack, which he thought was odd. He fills Hermione and Ron in on his suspicions that Snape went after whatever Fluffy was guarding while the troll was a distraction. But before he can get much further with this theory, mail delivery comes and Harry gets an oddly shaped package that turns out to be a Nimbus 2000 from Professor McGonagall. and that is where our scenes end for this week. The corresponding chapter to these scenes is a bit more subtle this week, and simply builds out some character development and key plot points that are essential later on. But the movie glosses over or completely changes some key elements, such as the continuation of Draco and Harry's feud. So let's dive into our changes with our first category of characters. This week is quite simple, as there really aren't any changes except for the fact that Peeves once again gets the short end of the stick. At this point, I almost need a counter for how many times he is involved in the chapters, because each week I just get more amazed that he wasn't included in the films. Next, as for timeline, there isn't so much an in-world change as there is a change with the chronology of the book chapters and the movie scenes. In the book, they eat breakfast first and discuss the package that Hagrid took from the vault in Gringotts, and Harry receives his broom at this time. In the movie, however, they move this scene to after the Halloween dinner and troll attack. To make things easier to digest and analyze, I'll be going over the changes according to the timeline shown in the movie, not the timeline in the books. Lastly, before we get to plot changes, when it comes to location, there's only one difference, which is that Harry and Oliver Wood practice on the Quidditch pitch, not on the Hogwarts front lawn. This segues perfectly into our first plot changes, which all have to do with Harry's first Quidditch training session, so let's go ahead and dive into those alterations. By the way, speaking of Quidditch, let me give a quick shout out to my new gaming channel that I started a couple weeks ago and will be posting to periodically. If you like gaming content and are interested in Harry Potter games like Hogwarts Legacy or the new Quidditch Champions game that just came out, go ahead and subscribe. Alright, let's get into the changes. I'd like to start off, as I have been doing in recent episodes, by briefly summarizing where we're at the beginning of this chapter. This will help give some context to the changes and themes that were removed or altered for the film. After the night of them almost dying in the third floor corridor, Harry notes that Hermione refused to discuss the package from Gringotts with him and Ron, and Neville didn't want involved as he never wanted to see the three-headed dog again. Hermione gives Ron and Harry the silent treatment from that night all the way until they save her from the troll. Also, Harry mentions that when they turn up at breakfast the next morning, Draco is shocked and upset that they aren't expelled because he had just set them up the night before to get caught in the trophy room. Ron and Harry then have it out for Draco and try to figure out a way to get back at him. By the way, if you're a little lost, be sure to check out this series playlist and catch up with any episodes you might have missed. Alright, so now that we know how the chapter starts, let's go back to the movie and see how these scenes begin and list off the first few changes. To start, technically, Harry practices with Oliver Wood at 7 p.m., not some unknown time during the day as is shown in the movie. In fact, in the chapter, they stop practice because the field gets too dark to see anything, which is very different from the film. Next, Harry would have already had his Nimbus 2000 during this practice with Wood, which I'll explain more during a later change, since I'm trying to do this chronologically. Plus, his receiving of the special broom plays into his revenge on Draco, so hang in there. The next change is a smaller one, which is that Wood never says that if Harry catches the snitch, quote, we win. He tells him that whichever seeker catches the snitch wins an extra 150 points for their team, which usually results in them winning. I think they just dumbed down the rules a little bit for the movie because they essentially needed the viewer to understand a completely new sport in less than 3 minutes. So I don't blame them for just simplifying it and saying, if you catch the snitch, we win. By the way, another small change is that Harry doesn't hit a bludger through anything like they show in the movie, which means that Oliver never compliments him, saying that he would make a nice beater. When it comes to this practice in general, we really miss out on what I think is one of the best character building moments. Harry is having the time of his life flying on his new broom, showing off his seeker skills for Oliver, and just having fun. The movie cuts a lot of this stuff for time, and this is one of those moments that would have been cool to see. As many Potterheads know, Quidditch was one of the first things to get cut when it came to writing for the films, and this is one of those cut moments. For context, this is essentially what happens in the book. Wood tells him that they won't practice with the real snitch because it's too dark and they might lose it. So he takes golf balls and starts throwing them in the air in all directions around Harry, and Harry practices by going to catch each one. Harry doesn't drop a single one during the whole practice, and Wood is seriously impressed by this, saying that he wouldn't be surprised if Harry turns out better than Charlie Weasley, who could have gone pro if he wouldn't have gone off chasing dragons. A little side note here is I'm not really sure how he had golf balls, as wizards don't know any of the Muggle sports. Okay, so now we can move on to the next scene, which is their charms class. This scene only has a couple of changes. The first change is that Seamus doesn't blow up his feather, but rather prods it with his wand and accidentally sets it on fire. Second, Hermione emphasizes the wrong part of the spell in the movie. In the book, Hermione and Ron are paired together for the class, which explains why she is trying to help him out by telling him that he's saying it wrong. In the movie, she tells him that he is saying the Leviosa part wrong by emphasizing the sa instead of the o, but in the book, she tells him to emphasize the gar in Wingardium. Strange change for the movie, and I guess we can add it to the list of changes made for no apparent reason. Next, we come to the Halloween feast, and the first change is that Quirrell runs all the way to Dumbledore's chair and speaks to him directly. He doesn't just stop in the middle of the Great Hall, yelling at everybody like they show in the movie. Next, we have another Peeves moment, even if it's only by name. In the movie, Ron says that trolls are really stupid, and it's probably just, quote, people playing jokes for Halloween. However, in the book, Ron says that it's Peeves playing jokes. If you've been keeping up with this series so far, you'll know that this makes a lot more sense. So now we have a bit of a bigger plot change in regard to the overall story. As you know, Harry's suspicion of Snape is one of the main plot points for the whole movie, but the film changed a key element of why Harry suspects Snape during this troll attack. You see, as Harry and Ron head to get Hermione from the girls' bathroom, they see Snape going towards the third floor corridor, and they both wonder why he isn't in the dungeons with the rest of the professors. Now, of course in the movie, they do show Snape sneaking out a side door, which is probably their interpretation of this part of the chapter, but in the book, they clearly see him walking down a hallway toward the forbidden corridor. In the book, this sighting is the primary reason for Harry's suspicion, as another change is that Harry doesn't see Snape's leg bleeding in the bathroom after the troll attack. And speaking of the troll attack, that event is slightly different as well. In the book, they actually lock the troll in the girls' bathroom with Hermione in there. You see, while snooping around the halls trying not to get caught, they smell the foul stench of the troll and then spot it at the end of the hall. It pauses before entering a room and then goes inside, and the boys notice that the key is in the door to the room. So they quickly leap at the door, slam it shut, and lock it, taking the key with them. Triumphantly, they begin to run away as they believe they have saved the day, but before they get too far, they hear a girl's scream, and realize that they just locked the troll in the girl's bathroom with Hermione. Next, when rescuing Hermione in the movie and fighting the troll, she tells Ron to swish and flick. But in the book, Ron's heroic moment is very spontaneous, and it isn't like Hermione had the time to coach him or even know what spell he was going to use. This is just another instance of this being more of a kids movie. Don't get me wrong, the book is a kids book as well, but the chapter is a bit more realistic in this sense, with Ron kind of performing the spell in a panic on his own. As McGonagall says, it was sheer dumb luck. Now we have another change after they left the bathroom. Ron actually complains that they should have gotten more than 10 points for Gryffindor, and Harry corrects him saying that they really only got 5 points after you subtract the 5 that Hermione lost. This is just a funny moment as Ron is focused on the wrong thing per usual, but this is also a touching moment as the book mentions that after this point, Hermione starts talking to them again and they all become friends officially. I guess for them, you need 2 life-threatening situations before you really bond. Now we come to the next scene in the movie, which shows them at breakfast in the Great Hall, the day of Harry's first Quidditch match. But like I said at the beginning of this video, the timing is a little off with these scenes and the chapters. Primarily, Harry receives his broom at the beginning of this chapter, but there's also a subtle difference in the conversation they have. In the movie, Harry mentions that he thinks whatever is being hid in Hogwarts is the same as the item Hagrid got from Gringotts. This makes sense chronologically in the movie, but in the book, Harry and Ron had already been theorizing about this ever since their close call with Fluffy. And as I mentioned earlier, Hermione refused to participate in those conversations as at that time she was still shunning them. So I think they moved this around a bit to be after Hermione becomes friends with them, that way she could be included in the conversations. Because in the movie, Ron acts like this is the first time Harry is bringing it up, when he's actually already heard this quite a bit. Now lastly, we have the moment of Harry getting back at Draco. Like I said at the beginning, Harry and Ron didn't really have a way of outright getting back at him in the same way that Draco was trying to take Harry out of school. After all, Harry and Ron weren't trying to get Draco expelled. However, they figured out that the best form of revenge would be attacking Draco in his weakest spot, which is his ego. The book mentions how Draco would often brag about being the best Quidditch player, and how he had a great broom at home, and how it was a stupid rule that first years couldn't be on the Quidditch team or have a broom at school. So what better way to get back at Draco than to shock him with the opposite of what he would want? Instead of Harry getting expelled, Draco's prank gets Harry on the Quidditch team as a first year and gets him the best broom there is, a Nimbus 2000. Better than even Draco's broom at home. But you know how I said that the movie kind of ruins this payoff? Well, we never get to see that look on Draco's face. We never get that sweet interaction between Harry and Draco when Draco finds out what really happened because of his prank. But in the book, we do get this payoff. And this leads to the final change we have for these scenes, which is that Harry doesn't open his broomstick in the Great Hall. Here's what really happens. He actually receives a letter along with the broom, which tells him not to open the package as it is a new Nimbus 2000. The letter is signed by Professor McGonagall, and it also includes instruction for Harry to have a Quidditch lesson with Wood at 7 p.m., which is the lesson we see earlier in the movie. But what happens next is the best part. As Harry and Ron are heading up to the Gryffindor Tower to open the package in secret and admire the new broom, Crabbe, Goyle, and Draco bar their way, and Draco snatches the package from Harry and tells him that he's in for it this time, as first years aren't allowed to have brooms. Of course, Draco is thinking that the third time must be the charm, and he finally has Harry cornered into getting expelled. Then Ron says that it isn't just any old broom, it's a Nimbus 2000, and then he insults Draco, saying that Draco has an outdated broom at home. This causes Draco to flare up, and the boys nearly break out in a fight, but before they can, Professor Flitwick shows up and Draco tattles that Harry has a broom. Draco's thinking that he finally got Harry, with the professor right there, seeing that Harry broke a school rule. However, much to Draco's shock and dismay, Flitwick says that he knows, and McGonagall has filled him in on the special circumstances. Remember, at this point, Harry's position on the Gryffindor team in the book is still a secret, so this comment from Flitwick is shocking but also confusing to Draco. Flitwick then asks Harry what model it is, and he says that it's a Nimbus 2000. And then Harry gets in the final word by saying, "It's really thanks to Malfoy here that I've got it." And on that note, Harry and Ron run up to their common room laughing, leaving Draco standing there dumbfounded with his jaw hanging open in shock. I know for some of you I might be making a big deal out of a small moment, but to me, this is one of the most critical wins for Harry in his battle against the real antagonist. In the movie, the payoff is in the next scene, which is the Quidditch game. Draco is sad because Harry catches the snitch and gets the win for Gryffindor. But in the book, this is a much sweeter revenge. You know how sometimes you walk away from a conversation thinking, oh man, I should have said this, and you relive the moment in your head? Well, this moment of Harry having the last word with Draco is like that, except all the right things happened. All in all, I'm just disappointed that the movie had to remove much of Draco and Harry's feud for time. Draco is in the movie as a convenient character to fill in some plot points, but in the book, he is much more than that. And this moment of Draco's plan backfiring and landing Harry on the Quidditch team with the best broom out there is the biggest win yet for Harry and Ron. And that wraps up this week's changes. If you enjoyed, be sure to like and subscribe and stay tuned each week as I continue going chapter by chapter, scene by scene through the Harry Potter series and analyzing all the differences between the books and the movies. Also, be sure to check out my Audible link in the description for a free trial of Audible. Have a great week, and I'll see you in the next episode.